Hurricane Milton that is hitting the panhandle already. And we were going to have Edgar Thompson on for the Orlando Sentinel. He wasn't able to join us because there's stuff already flying around everywhere. And yes, we think that Florida is prepared, but you never know, as Caleb pointed out, what can happen in a storm like this. So, Caleb, I do think that there will be several Florida players and maybe some Tennessee players that are from Florida that will be thinking about that storm on Saturday during the game. And I've seen that. You and I were discussing it at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. I've seen that happen before, where I think the Tennessee LSU game that was played in 2005.
Yep.
I believe it was moved to a Monday. And I still remember driving down and still being, goodness gracious, Caleb, 50 miles from Baton Rouge, and trees were down like an A-bomb had gone off. So, and most of LSU's players are from the area. They do such a great job recruiting there. I do think that at the end of that game, I think they came out in that game, and remember they had the early lead, and that was the Eric Ainge bouquet toss when he got thrown into the goalpost. And I think they came out with a lot of emotion, but I think because of the week, that emotion was spent later in the game. So I'm not saying that this is reason to get excited about either team. I mean, this is a game. We're talking about real people living and dying. But I do think that there will be some Florida players, more than Tennessee players, because they have more players from the state of Florida that are probably going to be thinking about that on Saturday. And I can't blame them, because the lives of your friends and families and loved ones are way more important than if the Vols beat the Gators or vice versa.
I agree. Can absolutely affect play. Now, does it affect play because of what's on their minds, or does it affect play because of it's affecting how they practice and their travel schedule and things like that? Nick Saban had, God, far be it from me to say Billy Napier can do for his team what Nick Saban can do for his team. I know that's like leaps and bounds differences, but when Hurricane Harvey hit Texas a few years ago, Alabama actually had quite a few players from Texas on their team. And Saban basically told this story. I mean, it's funny that he's from the Midwest because he sounds like a Southerner sometimes when he tells these stories. But he said that when he was a young kid working at his dad's grocery shop, he was really upset one day because his girlfriend had broken up with him. And he took it out on a customer. And his dad came to him and said, this is a real story. He said to Nick Saban, I know you're upset that your girlfriend broke up with you. So you got one problem right now. Your girlfriend broke up with you. But if you treat a customer like that again, I'm going to fire you. And then I'm going to beat the hell out of you because you got fired from your job. And he said, so you can have one problem or you can have three problems. Now, I don't know if that was the best analogy when his players were worrying about the hurricane and he was trying to say this is a business trip. But I think what the point he was trying to drive home was, don't let other issues, no matter how devastating they may be, affect your job and the role in front of you as a football team. And I wonder how that will happen with Florida. Now, again, Nick Saban, you trust to get his players focused to do that way more than you trust Billy Napier to get his players focused to do that. And that's part of it. And you're right. And that LSU game in 2005, what I distinctly remember was 2 weeks before LSU had played Arizona State, and that was when Katrina had hit. If you remember when you guys went down to Baton Rouge, that was when Hurricane Rita hit.
Right.
So Katrina had hit. They had to move the game from Baton Rouge to Arizona, and they played at Arizona State. That was when Jamarcus Russell. It's actually a thrilling game. Les Miles' first win as a head coach. Jamarcus Russell converted like a 4th and long to win that game. LSU goes home to play Tennessee. And yeah, they jumped out to a 21-0 lead. But honestly, I remember watching that game, Dave, and you probably were covering it. You didn't think LSU got that 21-0 lead because of anything they did. Tennessee just looked awful in that first half. And I think a lot of people
felt it affected their game prep. Is that what you're saying?
I think it affected their game prep significantly because I thought LSU played horrible that game.
Well, again, I tell you, Philip Fulmer thought it should be postponed. And Philip Fulmer, like a lot of us, don't make those sorts of opinions or develop those sorts of opinions unless it benefits us. So I do believe that he either thought that LSU was the better team, or they would be emotionally charged, or for whatever reason, Tennessee was not as prepared as they should have been. And listen, there's this crescendo of a week through practice that leads to a game. So you can say, oh, well, they just moved the game to 2 days back. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, it is kind of a big deal. But I think the biggest thing, the most pervasive thing that if you're a Florida fan, you would be worried about, you're probably more worried about your home. Again, I'm not trying to minimize what is going on. You're all in my thoughts and prayers, but just in terms of how it pertains to the game, they say you lose yourself as an athlete sometimes in those 4 hours, and that's your escape, and it might be, but most oftentimes we're not having that discussion when the actual issue is going on, right? Like,
Yeah.
The other one that's kind of similar is, would you leave the US Open if your wife went in labor? Okay. So everybody's different. I would say that I don't want to know if she goes in labor, and don't tell me. I mean, I know that sounds awful, but it's true. That's how I would view it. And then when I get done, we'll find out if I got a baby or not. Okay. Let's hope it doesn't go to extra holes.
Well,
But in this particular case, you can't get away from it, Caleb. It's going to be on your phone. You're going to be calling family. And I don't believe it's just going to be an escape, because it's happening at that very moment, or at least news is filtering in. I mean, how many players are going to immediately run to their locker and check their phone to make sure that their family's okay?
yeah, luckily for them, the hurricane's happening now and it'll be gone by the weekend. So I think the bigger question at that point will be there will be recovery efforts, and some of their families will be affected by the recovery. And they'll be like, okay, yeah, how, where are they? Are they at a place to stay? Where are you? That'll still be there. I think it's going to more, because of when it's hit, Dave, I think it's going to affect Florida practice wise than it is the actual game. I think the way and you've talked about this all the time, the emotions in a game, it's not that they affect the game. They don't affect the game by your emotions in the game itself. They affect the game because of how you practice the week leading up to the game. And that's where you're right. The issue with Florida is, I do want to just on a very, and again, this is a very serious topic, but in a lighthearted way, I want to point out, Dave, that, that 05 Tennessee LSU game, as I told you, in our production meeting, that was one of the earliest coaching masterpieces by Les Miles. I mean, that's the other reason LSU lost that game, was because Les Miles. There's a famous photo. You'll love this. LSU late in the game, after the game was tied, got an interception. There's a famous photo of Les Miles running to the refs to call a timeout. And he's like, he didn't get the timeout off because coaches couldn't call timeouts from the sideline at that point. But the reason it was hilarious was because, why are you trying to call a timeout after an interception? I mean, yeah. But that was Les Miles at his absolute best. And boy, was that. I mean, at the end of the first half, LSU was up 21-0. Tennessee can't move the ball. And Les Miles tries to call a play for Jamarcus Russell with 8 seconds left and no timeouts. And Jamarcus Russell scrambles and the clock runs out. If they just settle for the field goal, they go up 24-0. They're inside the 10-yard line.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Do you think you would be able to put it on your mind, out of your mind, specifically in a game of football? Because a game of football, you only play half the game, offense, defense. So there's times for it to creep into your mind. I think that in every other sport, especially basketball, you're playing offense or you're playing defense. I just think the nature of football makes it easier for your mind to wander a little bit.
I actually agree. I just don't know if practicing makes it easier for your mind to wander a little bit. And again, it's the practicing leading up to the game is where I wonder their mentality is more than anything else.
Okay, I'm with that.